Recently, the government of Indonesia has moved toward opening more sectors in different industries to foreign investment. So, for example, agriculture is a sector that is open for foreign investment at 100%. So, I can give you an example. We have some clients who are growing coffee and tulips in the mountains of Gesing or in this area of the island. So people tend to believe that it's only about real estate.
While the world's still asleep, we're already grinding. Walking foreign streets, big city lights so blinding. Learning and hustling in this relentless game. The Emerge pods next up, we're breaking the frame. While the world's still asleep, we're breaking the frame. We already grinding. The Emerge pods next up, we're breaking the frame. Big city lights, so blinding. Check it out.
Hi, and welcome to the Emerge podcast, where we break down emerging markets and give you actionable insights on how to start and grow your business in them. Today's episode is slightly different than what we usually do on this podcast. We are currently in the bustling city of Jakarta, and we are joined in our office in Jakarta by Reda, who is our head of branch and director for Emerhub Bali. Reda, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So what we're going to do today is we're going to have this like an inside Emerhub look of what work Emerhub Bali does, what does it stand for, what kind of clients does it have. So I guess that's where I would like to start the conversation. In a brief intro, tell me about Emerhub Bali.
Well, Emerhub Bali is one of the 7 offices that Emerhub has in Southeast Asia. What we do is we assist foreigners in general to relocate in Bali in particular or in Indonesia in general. When I say relocate, it's not only about having a visa or having a permit to stay in the country, but basically we assist to relocate in a larger scope. Incorporating a company, obtaining the appropriate license, running their tax and accounting, and let them focus on what they do best, meaning running their business, while we take care of all the aspect of compliance and legality of this business in Indonesia.
Fantastic. So before we get into the business side of things, I'd like to know a bit more about you. So how did you get into this industry of corporate services provider?
Well, that's a long story, but I'll try to make it short. I mean, I'm coming from a totally different background. I'm a civil engineer. I worked all over the world, specifically in the Middle East for over 10 years. Then COVID happened.
Yeah.
It shuffles all our plans, and I decided to move to Indonesia in 2020. Things again, another COVID lasted 2 years, so we had to reassess our plans, moved again to Bali, from Jakarta to Bali, and this is where I met the owners of Emerhub, and I had the opportunity to join the team as the head of the operation or the director of Bali office.
Fantastic. So as someone who came from, who's not natively Indonesian, so you're pretty much the right profile of what our clients are like as well. So they move to Bali and then they figure out what kind of businesses do they need to set up. What's it like coming to Indonesia as a foreigner and living here?
So there are 2 sides to answer to this question. I mean, living here as someone who find a job and work for a company, which is like any other capital in the world or specifically in Southeast Asia. You have all the facilities. Jakarta is a very modern city where you have all the high standards of living of any other capital in the world. Now, when you want to relocate on your own, establish your own business, apply for your work permit on your own, that's a different ballgame. Where I was reading recently a ranking of easiness of doing business all over the world, and Jakarta or Indonesia in general was ranked 72nd or 73rd.
Okay.
So yes, that's the reality, and this is how it works here in Indonesia. However, when you find the right partner, when you find the right corporate services specialist beside you, those ranking, doesn't mean much, as you have the specialist beside you, the specialist of the local market, the specialist of the regulation and the compliance in the country. And that can be much easier and smoother if obviously you surround yourself with the right people.
Yeah, I guess it might be a difficult process, but at least there is the possibility of that process being done, because there are certain countries in Asia where I can, say that it's very difficult for a foreigner to move and start a company. They just don't have the ability to do that, even with the right partner. But at least Indonesia is open to more investments coming in, it's open to foreigners. Would that be a fair assessment?
That you are 100% correct. I mean, that's the truth of Indonesia opening to foreign direct investment. I mean, I know Indonesia and Jakarta since 2012, and I can assess that the situation has dramatically improved, and the government direction is toward assisting and making it simpler and offering incentives for foreigners to bring their businesses or incorporate new businesses in the country.
Interesting, but let's move to Bali now. So, of course, there's a very different mindset of foreigners coming to Indonesia, and that differs vastly when you look at Indonesia versus Bali. What are people doing in Bali?
Well, Bali is the top island, is the top ranking island in the world for tourism. We expect 16 million tourists this year.
Wow.
So what are the businesses affiliated or related to tourism? Well, real estate. Well, services related to the real estate. And that will be the top one. The second one will be as well, industry. Bali is has a big and deep culture. So all what is handicraft, all product that can be manufactured locally and exported all over the world are also a big part of the businesses that are done in Bali. Recently, the government of Indonesia has moved toward opening more sectors in different industries to foreign investment. So, for example, agriculture is a sector that is open for foreign investment at 100%. So, I can give you an example. We have some clients who are growing coffee and tulips in the mountains of Gesing or in this area of the island. So people tend to believe that it's only about real estate, which is true, it does represent a big bunch of the foreign investment. However, diversification is very important, and this is what we are witnessing right now.
It's so cool to see that there's actually like farming in Bali, because again, as a foreigner, when we think of Bali, we think of everything around tourism. So whether it's the hotels, the Airbnbs, the restaurants, the bars, the tourist stuff, right? So, but you're saying that other than that, there are more opportunities to be found in Bali that are not exactly linked to tourism, farming being one of them. What else do you see in the market, which is, something, a kind of business that foreigners can look into, which is not directly related to tourism?
Other industries that are open for foreigners, as we mentioned, the real estate, the agriculture, that represent a big part of the business. However, recently as well, pharmaceutical industry or businesses are 100% open for foreigners.
Right.
So basically, we have some small level plants of manufacturing of generic pills or generic medicines are also welcome in Bali.
Okay, interesting. But then, when you look at businesses like that, what are the benefits of someone starting that in Bali specifically, as opposed to the rest of the region, or as opposed to Jakarta? Why would someone open that kind of manufacturing in Bali?
I mean, there are obviously the services that are, or the incentives that are available for Bali clients are the same all over Indonesia.
Of course.
So it's under the same regulation, it's under the same laws. So the businesses, the legal framework, let's say, is the same. Now, Bali has a much higher exposure to tourism. What does it mean? Is the governments want to have also the infrastructure that will support those tourism. Infrastructure meaning, can we provide locally all the services, all the product that the foreigners that want to relocate, that want to come for tourism, can find it locally? Because after all, Bali is an island, and everything, the local production, the local manufacturing, the local agriculture is by definition very limited. So we have to import everything. When I say import, is most of the services or the product we have in Bali comes from Java.
Yeah.
So the government direction, the Bali government, and we have to be thankful and recognize the huge effort that has been done, is to try to relocate and making available locally most of the product that the foreigners might need.
So I think that does two things. One, it opens up a lot of industries for more foreign investment, like all of these manufacturing stuff. And two, it actually makes the life of businesses easier when they get things done locally.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course, like you have some companies that will buy the furniture from Bali, refurbish it, redesign it, and sell it to clients that are not only over the world, but because Bali is a big market now, they can find it locally as well.
And it makes the process easier too, because I had a restaurant owner from Bali on the podcast, and he mentioned that getting his produce was a huge problem for him, because he was either getting it, the local produce was not fulfilling the demand of restaurants, and he had to import a lot of it. And even on that, he had to wait and at times he was left with nothing. So he actually went into farming himself. So that's exactly the story that's happening here, that people are moving to that side of business, the manufacturing side, to fulfill the gaps in the market.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, at the end, so people get creative as well with the incentive of the government and the local government for finding everything locally. The supply chain has been very, very challenging. COVID didn't help neither. So many products are now available in the market. I told you the example of my client who has a tulip farming in the mountain of Gesing, which is something that was unheard of. I mean, tulips, Indonesia is not well known for tulips, as you can imagine. So finding tulips on the market, fresh on the next day, is a big game changer. I give the example of the flower. It's just an easy, but we can think about hundreds of different applications that can be developed within the island and available the next day.
That's actually exciting, because when you think of markets anywhere in Southeast Asia, we all know that we've had investors flocking to Southeast Asia to invest for a long time now. And of course, Emerhub has been helping a lot of investors set up businesses. But even after all that, there are still opportunities to be found if you're creative about, your approach. So if your business, you can come up with creative business ideas, and they can be great for the market. But I want to understand the journey of that. So that kind of stuff comes with when you're living in Bali and you're looking at what are the requirements and stuff. So based on what your clients go through, what is their journey of starting a business? Do they come to Bali first, check stuff out, and then decide to open a business? Or do they come to Bali knowing what kind of business they want to set up?
Basically, it's also a lifestyle decision. Bali has a big and huge appeal for the lifestyle, for the culture, for the nature, for the locals, for the Balinese people, and all the temples that you can find around. And that's the usual journey, as you describe it, is someone who comes for a tourism purpose, as it is the first island, the most visited island in the world, and they fall in love with the country, and they fall in love with the systems, and they fall in love with the culture, and they fall in love with the local people. And a first time, a second time, and in average, we always have requests like for tourists coming and getting curious to say, how about I have something in here? How easy it can be, how complicated it is. And most of our clients started their journey in Bali like that. So their eye-opener is coming as a tourist, considering and having Emerhub services available, and giving the right information will assist them, will give them the idea to, how about if I relocate here? How complicated it is? And that's how it comes. And then obviously the first one is, most of the time, is a business that they know already, that they master already in their home country. But when they come to Bali, you have like multiple ideas that will pop up on your mind, and apply those ideas that they had in their country, or their knowledge and their skills, to the island.
Perfect. So let's answer that question now. How difficult is it for a foreigner to come here and set up a business, even considering that they have someone like Emerhub? What's the process like, and where are some challenges?
I mean, it might be surprising for most of the people that are listening to us. However, the process has been streamlined and made easy to help and to encourage foreign investments. When I say foreign investment, is from the smaller person who want to have a small coffee shop to the big manufacturing plant, like water decontaminations as well, that we have a plant as well in Bali. So the process is very straightforward, and the government of Indonesia has offered the opportunity to have a structure, a legal structure called PTPMA, that allows 100% foreign ownership. So in comparison to 10 years ago or even 15 years ago, that was a major concern when a foreigner want to invest on the island. So now you can be 100% full owner of your company in Bali. or in Indonesia. The process is very straightforward, and it takes 3 to 5 days to get your company up
Okay.
and running.
That's pretty fast.
It is.
Yeah. But there's no red tape. Are there any capital requirements?
So there is a capital requirement, but there is a capital requirement that is up to 10 billions IDR.
Okay.
This capital requirement is like any LLC in the world. It's called a paid up capital.
Right.
So this amount of money can be injected gradually into the as the need of operations goes on. So the compliance is that every quarter you need to report to the government the percentage or the amount of investment of injection capital that you have done and that you have used for your operation.
Okay, so let's move beyond the company setup part, the visas part, right? So after someone set up their PTPMA with Emerhub, how do they get a visa? What's the process like?
So basically, when you open a company, when you incorporate a company with Emerhub or in Indonesia, the next step will be to hire a resident director. A resident director, what does it mean? It could be an Indonesian, a local, or a foreigner equipped with the appropriate work permit. So in essence, if you are an investor, you come to open a company, then this company will sponsor you as the director to apply for the working KITAS.
So you can be the resident director yourself?
Correct.
Okay, all right. And then you can get a KITAS?
Absolutely.
Okay, and what's the duration of the KITAS? Is it for 2 years?
So the process for applying a KITAS is also very straightforward. A KITAS is a stay permit and a work permit, both said. So a stay permit will be for 1 year, and then the sponsorship, your company that is sponsoring you will allow you to work within the industry that you have selected for 1 year.
Okay, and then you can of course renew it every year?
Absolutely.
Got it. Because in the UAE, we have that for 2 years. But I think that's pretty similar to what we have as well. So, all right. So let's go back to the story of the foreigner who's setting up in Bali, right? So he's set up his PTPMA. He's got his visa. He's here now. Oh, by the way, this is another point. Is there a requirement, any mandatory requirements to have an office space?
Yes, like every LLC all over the world, a company cannot be incorporated without a physical address.
Right.
So at Emerhub, we offer our service of virtual office.
Yeah.
To speed up the process, as you are a foreigner, you come to the country, obviously you don't have everything set up yet. You don't have an address. If you want to invest in property, you don't have a land, you don't have a house yet under your name. And what we offer is, part of our package is to offer a virtual office, using our office as the main address of the company, where you can use it, where you can receive your mail for any organization or all the authorities.
Ideally, that would be for a short duration though, right?
Of course.
After which the company would have their
Absolutely.
own,
So what we offer is, we offer a renewable contract for virtual office for 1 year.
All right, makes sense. How easy is it to find people to work for your company in Bali? What's the talent pool like?
Again, we come back to the same idea that Bali is an island.
Yeah.
Bali is an island with a limited pool, with a limited supply of human resources. So obviously the Balinese people are very skilled, and there are multiple universities that provide a lot of very well educated young Balinese. However, like an island, and with the appeal of Bali and the amount of tourists, Bali requires a lot of workers, a lot of skilled workers, a lot of engineers, a lot of salespeople from other islands of Indonesia. And Indonesians can move from one island to another, obviously, and they can be working for Bali.
Do Indonesians want to move to Bali? Because I can see the appeal of Bali for a foreigner, but is that same appeal true for Indonesians as well?
Absolutely. I mean, most of our employees in Bali are coming from other islands in Indonesia.
Okay.
So we have a big pool of Indonesians from Bali, Balinese people, and we have other origins from Bali.
Interesting. From Indonesia, yeah.
Indonesia, sorry.
Okay, so back to the story of the foreigner investing. So he's got his PTPMA set up. He's got that office space as well. How easy is it to open a bank account?
Well, again, that's also, once you have a PTPMA, you are a legal structure. So you are allowed to apply and sponsor the kitas of the directors, to apply to hire any number of employees, to open a bank account under the name of the company. And once you have your kitas, you can have a bank account under your personal name. Because a kitas, you are considered like any other resident of the country.
Perfect. And so once you have the bank account, and okay, let's imagine the person's come to Bali, set up the company, set up the bank account, now they're doing business. What's taxation like?
So a PTPMA, that's an excellent question. Yeah. A PTPMA offer a preferred rate for the PTPMA for the first 3 years at the corporate level at 0.5% on the revenue.
Okay. That's nothing. Other than 3 years, is there any other thresholds, perhaps for how much revenue you have?
After the 3 years, the tax level will be at 11%, not on the revenue, but on the profit only.
All right.
So the first 3 years is 0.5% on the revenue. After the first 3 years, you will have it at 11% on the profit.
Okay, but are there any thresholds for how much money you should be making to be eligible for tax, or is like
for the first 3 years you are at 0.5% if you don't exceed 4.8 billions IDR.
How much is that in USD?
Which roughly is around 220,000 USD in a fiscal year in revenue. So if you exceed that level, you become a VAT taxpayer, and the taxation level will change and will be at 11%.
So that's the story of, again, setting up a business and the professional life of living in Bali. But there are, of course, other opportunities to be had in Bali as well. So the first one I've been thinking about for a while now is the Airbnb side of things, right? Again, very linked to the tourist industry. But how's the property market doing? Is it full of Airbnbs now, or is there still some room?
I mean, obviously the market is booming. We need accommodations, we need villas, we need real estate, or we need the resorts to accommodate those 16 million tourists per year. That's the target for this year and next year as well. So there is still rooms for foreign investors to come in the market. However, the key remains differentiation, as obviously people likes to feel comfortable, people likes to have their own private swimming pool, people like to have a breakfast on the pool, and those are small activities that are very interesting for foreigners. And this is why other areas, not only in the usual Bali villa style, but in the mountains, on the north of Bali, in Ubud, in Munduk, in Gesings, where they can offer an alternative stay. So an alternative style of staying in Bali.
So what you're saying is that there is still room for foreigners to construct or buy villas in Bali and convert them into Airbnb, because I'd imagine that the amount of investment that's happened in Bali on real estate, it might be full by now. So how is Bali spreading overall to accommodate the new tourists?
Well, there are plenty of new areas that are still an untapped market, if you can call it that way. So if you go more into the west side of the island, there are a lot of opportunities that can be exploited by the foreigners, like areas like Tabanan. After Tanalot, Tabanan are still into a high demand, and the availability is still very interesting at a very interesting price.
And what's the process like for a foreigner to come in and perhaps buy? Let's start with buying. So how does a foreigner come to Bali and buy a property? Do they have to set up a company first?
That's one of the positive points or the incentives of having a PTPMA, a company, a legal structure in Indonesia. As a foreigner, under your name or under your passport, you are not allowed to buy any property or any land within Indonesia, or Bali in particular. Having a PTPMA, on the other hand, offer you the opportunity to acquire a land or a property, not
in the name of the company.
Under the name of the company.
Okay.
It's a kind of a freehold. Why I say it's a kind of a freehold? Because it's limited to 80 years. However, it has a much better interest, a much better return on investment, as it's not a leasehold that you can usually have under your name.
What does that mean?
So basically, a leasehold is a limited contract for 10 or 20 years. After those 10 years, for example, let's say it's 20 years. After 10 years, you will still have 10 years in your leasehold, and you can sublease it. However, the value has dropped because you only have 10 years to sublease. However, if you take a freehold limited at 80 years, if after a certain number of years, after 10, 20 or 30 years, you sell it to another PTPMA, then you have the clock start ticking again.
Okay.
And the new PTPMA will have 80 years again.
All right.
And if you sell it to an Indonesian, he will get a lifetime ownership again. So basically, the freehold will not have the same dramatic reduction in price that you have in the leasehold.
But how is the market generally progressing with, prices going higher, or is it stable right now?
Market is definitely going higher. Obviously, the leasehold is getting much more expensive at a much higher rate than the freehold.
Okay, and is that attributed to foreigners coming in and buying more? Is there a high demand and low supply?
Not really. Not really. I mean, we have a lot of lands to sell, obviously, but prices are going up because there are a lot of developments going on. There are a lot of big resorts and big attractions and big malls, and that will increase the prices of the surrounding area.
Okay, excellent. And how does, so when a PTPMA owns this, whether it's a freehold or a leasehold, can they, of course, convert it to Airbnb right away?
So not directly, you will require an additional license. And that's why you need the services of a corporate services company such as Emerhub for assisting you in acquiring the appropriate license to run what we call a daily rental revenue business. So once you have your PTPMA and you acquire a property, you need to apply for an additional license called Pondok Wisata. This license allows you to generate revenue from a daily rental business.
Let's move on to the freelance and digital nomad lifestyle of things, right? Because I personally met and know of people in Bali who move there again for the lifestyle and stay there for the lifestyle while working for companies outside Indonesia. So how does that work? How do they get their visas?
I mean, the remote worker KITAS, because it's still a residency, so a resident permit, was the new regulation was released September 2023 and implemented in December 2023. So basically, foreigners who are still working for an overseas company can apply for a remote worker visa, a remote worker KITAS, what is valid for 1 year or 2 years, and then you will be able to continue working for the company that employ you overseas while still working and legally working for that company in Bali.
So if you're on that visa, can you legally, according to the law, work with local companies as well?
The remote worker KITAS allows you only and only to work for the company that hire you, that employ you outside Indonesia. It doesn't allow you to perform any business activity or generate any revenue within the Indonesian market.
And is there like a minimum requirement of how much the remote workers should be making?
So one of the requirements of the remote worker KITAS is to justify an income of 60,000 USD in the previous year.
Okay, that comes down to what is it? Almost a little under
$5,000 a month.
Okay. That's pretty high compared to some of the other markets. It's a little high.
It's true, but that goes as well in the direction of the government of Indonesia to have not only attracting a mass tourism, but to target high income individuals who wanna enjoy the lifestyle of Bali or the Bali lifestyle.
So then, in that case, if they've made this more difficult, would it be easier to just register a PTPMA and hire yourself and just working in Indonesia?
It's a matter of cost as well. I mean, incorporating a PTPMA has obviously a higher price tag and maintenance fees as well. As you need to report your tax on monthly basis, you need to report you need to present your investment report, and you need to present as well and file for your corporate income tax at the end of the year. However, the remote worker KITAS doesn't have any of those obligations.
So it's cheaper, but the requirements are slightly more difficult. Okay, interesting. But of course, with that remote worker visa, you can't even serve the local market as a freelancer or something. So it might technically be better for someone to set up a PTPMA if they can afford it, of course.
Well, the idea remains the same. I mean, if you want to relocate in Indonesia to enjoy the lifestyle, you are in the transition period and you would like to see how it goes. Maybe it's for you, maybe it's not for you. And while not generating or not having a clear idea about where your investment is going to be, a remote worker key task can be the option number one.
Yeah.
After a year, when you get the temperature of the market, you can decide and take an informed decision on the next step for your investment journey.
So overall, I feel like that there's a lot of opportunity generally in Bali for starting a business or working in the service industry or the manufacturing industry. But and we've explored that the process of doing all of that is kind of straightforward as well. It's not very difficult. Especially when you have a partner. But what are some of the challenges that a foreigner can encounter when setting up a business? And where does language land on that scale?
All the regulation is published in Indonesian.
All right.
All the reporting, tax and accounting compliance is done in Indonesian. So having the right partner who understands the market, who understands the regulation, who understands the requirement, is a must.
Absolutely. No one can do it without it then.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What are the pitfalls and what are the what are the usual mistakes or that foreigners falls in is not being non-compliant with the tax and accounting requirement. So basically those are the biggest, or I would say the number one reason for businesses to fall into trouble is not to be aware of the tax requirement and not to be compliant.
Are the penalties for non-compliance harsh?
Extremely.
What's the worst that could happen?
Obviously, it will be a percentage of the amount that you were supposed to pay. There will be a fine per month delayed for each report that is not filed, and it can end up to a company that could be frozen or their asset being liquidated or taken over by the government.
Well, of course, having a partner can make the process easier, right? That's always a given.
When you say partner, is more like a corporate services company.
Absolutely.
Who will support you in your journey into this new adventure in Bali.
Of course, but again, having that corporate services company with you to take care of all of that is definitely, it appears to be a must in Indonesia, and primarily because, again, it's in the language that you won't be able to speak, right? But what I'm trying to analyze is, I don't think we can, ideally say that it's. I don't want to scare foreign investors by saying, okay, the market is impossible and you can't do it on your own. Because even if you have a partner, you still, as an investor, you still have to be on top of the tax stuff. So is the tax stuff difficult, or is it just about missing the deadlines?
I wouldn't call it difficult, but it's different. Okay. So we have a big number or a big amount or a big quantity of foreign investors who are first-time business owners.
Yeah.
And they were not very familiar with what we talk about tax, accounting, compliance. So having someone who can guide you through this maze for the requirement is a must, in my opinion. So the first one is first-time business owners. Second category are the people who are already experienced. However, bookkeeping can be the same all over the countries.
True.
It's basically money in and money out. However, accounting is a totally different ballgame. Yeah. Accounting is different, percentages are different, deadlines are different, and calculation is totally different. So even the person who are, I would say, like an experienced business owner who will need the assistance of a person of Emerhub or a corporate services company that will guide you through this maze again.
Okay, so it's doable, it's just slightly trickier to understand because your audience is generally first-time business owners. That kind of makes sense. So I feel like we can continue doing this conversation for another hour, but I'll try to summarize that. Overall, what we've seen is that people come to Bali for the lifestyle, but they stay for the business because there are so many business opportunities. And that's kind of where I want to end this podcast as well. In your perception, if you've been in Bali for a while now, you understand the dynamics of both Jakarta and Bali. So what are some of the top industries where someone can invest in and get good returns? Because let's assume that we have a foreign investor who has money, wants to put it somewhere in Bali, doesn't know what industry they should go for. What are, in your opinion, the top 3 industries that someone can look at?
Thank you again for this opportunity of this podcast. And to summarize the discussions and to summarize what are the potential industries that we can have, I would say that the first one remains real estate for the appeal. When I say real estate, it's a very large name. I mean, a real estate could be a simple business owner who want to have one villa and put it on Airbnb or any other competitor for a daily rental. You have a different business model that will be someone who will be like a developer. So buying a land, building a property, and selling it for a profit. And you have the big-time investors who come and build big resorts and big hotels. So even in the real estate sector itself or industry, you have 3 different categories. So the second one that I really that comes as a logical second option is all the services associated to the real estate. So what we call as services associated to the real estate: restaurants, coffee shops, laundry, cleaning services, is something that is really getting more and more demand.
Okay.
And a lot of foreigners who come with their expertise in those fields, even if they want to try something different from what they know at home, they come and open companies as well. The third one remains for me agriculture.
Okay.
It's an untapped market that a lot of people are not familiar with.
Okay,
and we need to take advantage of the recent regulation change that allows that allows PT-PMA to operate at 100% in the agriculture sector.
So if they're allowing that, then setting up a company for agriculture in Bali might now be easier as well? And is it all as easy as setting up any other kind of company?
Absolutely. It's exactly the same process for setting up a PT-PMA.
Fantastic. Well, Reda, thank you so much for being the first guest of Inside Emerhub podcast. Before we end, how does someone get in touch with you and to learn more about any of the industries or company setups that you've spoken about?
So, thank you, Sohaib, for this opportunity as well and for having the first Inside Emerhub podcast. I really appreciate it, and it allows us to have an open discussion and how to contact us. So basically, we can reach out to us on the emerhub.com website, where you can find all the information and the details that we have discussed today. My professional contacts as well, are available on the website. In addition to all our social media platforms, where we are on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook as well.
And well, if someone's in Bali, they can just come to the office, right?
And whoever is in Bali, please feel free to knock at our doors, and we will wait for you.
Fantastic. Well, Reda, thank you so much for being on the episode.
Thank you, Sohaib. It was a real pleasure. Thank you.
While the world's still asleep, we're already grinding. Walking foreign streets, big city lights so blinding. Learning and hustling in this relentless game. The Emerge Pods next up, we're breaking the frame. While the world's still asleep, we're breaking the frame. We already grinding. The Emerge Pods next up.